حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اسمك دعاء إن شاء الله نستعد. اللهم آمين. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. فسبحان ربك رب العزة أما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Continuing our topic, Islam and Muslims in the modern world, and we're discussing the aspect of marriage in crisis, and we were discussing some of the points that would lead someone towards that direction of crisis. And we mentioned up to the last of them, we mentioned about beating a woman and so on, and those things that could lead towards divorce. After we talk about, which we mentioned here, divorce and the conditions of divorce, that what is left after divorce, or what really occurs at divorce in our current time. And many a times we think that this is something simple or something difficult, something sad, something in all different forms. This is taken into consideration. Divorce is one of the most challenging things for any individual. Apart from what the Quranic injunction tells us about divorce, more than that, divorce is a real challenge in the minds and the heart of those individuals who are undergoing such an exercise, because you are particularly accustomed to a certain norm in marriage, and out of marriage that is taken away and you go back to a single life. And going back to a single life is a very difficult thing, because you have to readjust every single thing in your life. And that means even sometimes the place you are staying, all of those things will have to be readjusted in your from marriage to being in a state of not being married, divorced. So we looked at why and how now this happens. And when a husband takes that opportunity and goes off on this action, we mentioned that, he says divorce and he pronounces talaq, and he mentions this and pronounces it 3 times all at once. And we say concerning that, what is mentioned about it, that we are told by the Prophet ﷺ, we are told in the Quran, that this is one of the most hated acts when it is pronounced like this. So when we look at what was mentioned here, it says that men are too quick to utter divorce to their wife. And this is what is mentioned. The Muslim world, which has been influenced by the modern Western world cultures and adopting and is currently experiencing higher divorce rates. The Muslim society, in any of the countries that you go into, even in our own environment here, we can tell you that it is of a higher rate than any other time. As is now, it is higher. No two ways about describing that, but that is the situation. And it is not just because people don't know or they're not educated and they don't understand marriage, but it's because of the system that is surrounding the lives of Muslims. We mentioned one of those high things that caused divorce in America last time was that divorce, when it was checked out, what was the main cause in our society today, it was because of phones, internet, and these things, Facebook. These things were one of the leading cause. 80% of the cases that were registered through court and went through court and deliberation, 80% of them was because something to do with Facebook. And it is a similar situation here. This is an epidemic that is affecting every aspect of life. It is affecting the lives of children, which is a topic we'll come to afterwards. It is affecting marriage life, it is affecting your workplace. Anything that you do today, the phone is making a big, big interference. And it is actually recording as one of the problems for that which is causing low production even in business. And that they have to find some ways and means to deal with that, which is the next problem by itself. But in our case here, we're talking about what led towards that particular position and what is amongst the things that when you record what happens, this is what they said had happened because of phone and internet and Facebook. Women still generally face a drop in their standard of living after divorce, which we mentioned from last time. That, yes, you're accustomed to a combined income, now you no longer have a combined income. Sometimes you are working, sometimes you're not working. And then who take care of you after you have divorced or you're left off divorce? And that is something we must also remember. Who take care of who after a divorce and immediately after a divorce? Sometimes the only way you can get something out of the husband, you have to take them to court. And that is not part of Islam, because Islam actually tells us that during that period that it is the right of the husband to give the woman a level of lodging, the wife as well as his ex-wife, and also provide for her during that period of time. His right is also to look after her children. That is how basic as you can get it to be said here. But that is a right that Islam allows. And if someone has to go to court to get that basic right, then something has to definitely be wrong with our iman. It has to definitely be wrong with our faith, that we doesn't understand as simple as what Allah is telling us that should be fulfilled. You don't have to wait to somebody to command you or put some restraint on you, to put an order on you, then for you're going to do what? Then for you to fulfill your rights? No, that should be forthcoming to show that there's some goodwill in respect of the situation that you are living in. So this impact on us as well. But however, as well, there's also a situation in society today that we see that women themselves are also empowered with wealth, that they can also now help themselves. A lot of women are like that, and they're never really afraid to leave circumstances in marriages whilst in a divorce. So they can leave and go, and that's it for them. They don't want to hear nothing again. They just leave and go and walk out of the marriage, or they leave the marriage, or they seek divorce, khula as we would call it. And that's a condition also that exists. Now, this is a case that is mentioned here, and what is the end result? It says, my husband divorced me 3 times in front of 2 witnesses. During the 3 months iddah period, he brought a fatwa from an Islamic mosque stating that 3 talaqs are counted as 1. All right, that is our opinion that is out there in the market today. All right, that 3 talaqs are counted as 1. And this is according to one of the schools of laws as well. Some of them make this opinion based on that principle. So 3 talaqs are counted as 1. So during the 3 months of iddat, this is what was mentioned when he came with this particular statement. We got back together. After further research, I have found in many places that if your husband divorces you 3 times, you are not halal for him. Meaning to say that divorce indeed has occurred. Right? So, yes, you're going to get opinions there that people say, if you pronounce it 3 all at once, it's still 1. No. If a person fires, as I mentioned last class, and he uses a weapon and he fires 3 shots at someone, you think he'll consider as 1 shot? It's still what? 3. Because the police will say what? They think they find 1 bullet hole, will find how much? 3. The fact of the matter is that this is what it is like. Divorce, once fired, each shot is counted as 1. So therefore, there is nothing like saying 3 could ever equal 1. And this is the power of what is mentioned by the Hanafi jurists and many other ulama and scholars of our time as well, that you cannot just say this 3 times and call it 1. It's impossible, because the fact is that each in itself is an entity by itself, as we would say, we'd call it a bullet. So you cannot tell yourself, well, this is something different. No, this is actually a word that when it's pronounced, it means it as is. So it cannot be different. And you didn't say, well, I say 3 and 3 mean 1. The reason why some of the world scholars And contemporary scholars today are trying to use this as a loophole, some I would say, because many of the authentic people will not go along with this particular point of view. And there's room for challenge and debate in this particular matter. But what is most important is for us to understand why. Because of the high rate of the pronunciation of talaq amongst people all at once, it is difficult to deal with the amount of divorce that actually takes place one time. So a person won't just say a divorce, you know. They go say it, and then you say, you say that, say it again, and they go say it again. And you say, if you feel really bad, say it again. And you say what? 3 times without even what? Thinking. And it happens. So don't think that you say, well, that 3 really mean 1. No, it can never happen to be 1. And it is happening so alarming all over the world that some countries have actually went ahead to enact laws to curb this level of separation. That's why now there are many places in different parts of the world, in Pakistan, maybe in some different other parts of Asia, Indonesia, they'll tell you about where they're actually setting up courts and they have committees set up that will mediate and deal with issues of divorce once that pronunciation of talaq is done once or twice. They take it to mediation to try and see if they can resolve the issues. And even if you feel you're having problems, they are recommending that you cannot pronounce divorce unless you reach this particular course in a committee or to a court or some settlement agency before you actually pronounce the divorce. So it may be a remedy that may be very well required at some point in time. Before you can actually pronounce divorce, it's best you seek this legal opinion, as we would say, from some Islamic scholar, some counselor, or some mediator, or some law that is involved in this particular field of work before you actually pronounce it, because your case will be heard and you'll be given a fair judge opinion, and with that, then you decide. But for a husband to rush into something like this, yes, he may see some valid points and reasons to do it, but he should not just jump into doing it, especially in our time. Now it is, as I said, so rampant that many people are trying to find ways and avenues in different countries in the world as to how to curb this pronouncement. And this is one of the things that they have set up, that you should not do this unless you have visited such an institution, such a place that actually offers this type of environment for us to deal with matters as such. So when this comes along and a person reaches a stage that, yes, 3 have been pronounced, but your husband is telling you 1, and you are saying, no, this is what? 3. How would a wife, in this case, the husband saying, well, that 3 is only 1, you know, and the wife saying, well, I know this is what? 3. You understand the environment that is established there now in that house? That she is definitely in a state thinking that we cannot come back together, and he is saying what? Well, we're still together. And therefore, it is of essence and importance that such people, husband and wife, prior to their divorce or intending divorce, they should get proper recommended, solutions to their problems, and they should be on the same level of thinking. And therefore, this woman in her condition like this, she herself knew that this can never be a right statement because of what the law is, that it is actually 3 and not 1. So she immediately went ahead and do what she has to do. So when a man, we should understand this, gives divorce, and usually when this really happens, when he gives this conceived divorce and of 3 talaqs verbally or in writing, it is classified as talaqul mughallada. That's the terminology used in Arabic for it. Literally meaning 3 talaqs, all at once. And whether the talaqs were issued in one sitting or on different occasions, I say, she would say, well, say it again, that kind of instigating it. So they are still valid and regarded as 3. Usually these things take up, the strength to say it because of someone insinuating something. And these things come about because of a particular word. That particular word that most people pay least heed to, and it's called sarcasm. See, what sarcasm has to do with all of this? You see, sarcasm is really shaitan. Shaitan comes in the form of sarcasm and instigates the first blow to you to separate. And how shaitan will come as sarcasm? Because if you understand what this word really tells you, and you understand this philosophy, because sometimes we miss the whole thing when we come to this particular point, because this is where the crux of the matter is when it comes to divorce. Because that word really means for one which intends divorce. The person in their mind, when he hits this shot of sarcasm, sarcasm really affects you the worst. You speak in a way that you hurt someone like a bee sting you. You know when a bee sting you, what happens? It's like it's sending a shiver up your spine one time. It goes to your heart and it affects your feeling immediately. And that's how words of sarcasm affect an individual and how they will react at that very moment. And you usually find people will use such words in and around when they're in that position that they want to be on top of any situation. So somebody want to make you feel bad, they use sarcasm, and they try to use all type of words to make you feel embarrassed, so you won't say a word after that. And usually when men want to take advantage of women, they would use such words that the woman will not want to talk. And they will bully them into submission and into that position of divorce. And it also is used as a position to aggravate, because they will say things and it will pile up until this person says, look, you better divorce me. Better leave me go. You understand? Words of sarcasm is used technically to rage this person into a position that shaitan will tell him, let him leave you, let him divorce you. And eventually, this person will say, it's best you give me divorce and I don't want to beat you again. He incites, or the husband in this case, incites that statement, and then she in turn would say, go right ahead, do what you have to do. And that is what sarcasm does. And we think that this word is nothing but more than satanic, and it affects people in many different ways. In marriages especially, this is how it works. This is how it works. And it causes that person to retaliate and cause them to say things out of what they would normally never say. And they would say it at this point in time, because all the time they were holding back and they were being in that state where they would say nothing. But at this point in time, because of how the words were building up, so much of sarcasm, it comes to that. And usually this is when a person wants to take control of a situation. So he already bent in his mind, here what is again. So he will do anything possible to get this person to agree on this separation. Or it could be the opposite way around, that she will do anything possible to get him to separate. And they will use this tool to get to that point of control. And in it, there comes a level of shame, because they will use words to bring shame to you. When sarcasm is used in this technique by men and women in the point of divorce, it reached the final position when they will actually fire a shot now and say, well, that's it. We over. And all of this is to manipulate this person and to get what you want at the end of it. And what it really means, it tears you apart. Sarcasm really tears you apart. People use words, and when you use words as such, it is as though it's worse than an arrow that will shot at you. And that is how divorces go to the extent towards destruction. And many people don't see it like that. They don't see what they're saying, or they don't hear what they're saying, they don't understand what they're saying and what they are doing to their marriage. But some of them, they are persuaded in this direction. Sometimes they might have an outside relationship that, put things in their mind that when they go home is a different story. So then they use these words and this sarcasm to get that manipulation on until they reach a point that they can actually separate. And that puts pressure on the marriage. And sometimes, maybe from the male or maybe from the female. It depends on how they look at the situation. But when divorce strikes, this is how the condition really hits you, with a level of all of these feelings hitting you one time. Shame, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling as though something really bites you, like a bee hit you, a good sting. That's how it's hitting you. Because this is the first time you ever get somebody who you love really give you a serious thing. And that really hurts. So, when this was mentioned to this woman, look, 3 talaq, what happens next? So, note on page 20, it tells us, it says, when a man gives his wife that 3 talaqs, that 3 divorce, whether these talaqs were issued in one sitting or in different occasions, they are still valid and regarded as 3. They cannot live together as husband and wife, and Allah Ta'ala knows best at the end of it. Mufti Ibrahim Desai and other muftis, other scholars are of the opinion, along with many other books of ifta and opinions that are given on this particular subject, that whenever you pronounce 3 talaq, it is considered as 3. And that is a knowledge that we must always hear and understand as Hanafi followers. This is part of our belief in relationship to divorce. Many people go in circles on this matter and seek Islamic legal opinions that will suit their needs. There are many people like that, and they want to, after they're done divorce, they will go by someone and someone will give them an opinion, and they feel that that is the opinion that they want. And they will seek an opinion so that they will not be considered to be divorced. This is how it is. But out of taqwa and piety, one should be very conscious of what they are saying. So questions and situations are developed to get the scholars or imam to rule in one's favor. They will make stories and go around, well, and she gave me vexed, but I didn't really mean to say that, and I didn't have that inside of my heart. So I didn't really mean that. They try all kind of low-down things to say that they really mean to say that. So what did you really say if you didn't say that? If you didn't feel to say that, how you managed to say that, and what did you say? And this is what happens. They will try to make you feel as though they know what they say wasn't what they actually said. But once it's actually said, you can mix words. You can't change the words. It is what it is, and it cannot be changed. So questions and situations are developed to get the scholars or imam to rule in one's favor. With regret, some hope that divorce did not occur. Some of them, so all the stories that they will try to say that they didn't mean what they say, at the end of it, they really regret. But you cannot take back the bullet out of the person that you have already killed. That is over. That is what it is considered to be, how dangerous it is. So you could try any story. It's just not going to add up at this point in time, because the words will be as is. So Muslim husband and wife, so to say, as this condition, because divorce has occurred, so to say, after divorce occurs, or my first ex, as we rightly say, they regret and go on living with each other. They say, well, what are we going to do? We don't do it already. But for the children's sake, we reach a different stage. So they regret, and they decide to what? Go on living with each other. This is the norm in Western society, until it reaches a stage where death or serious hurt or injuries take place. And there's also other important factor that must be bearing in mind here, because this is not your real husband anymore, even though you just think those words or what? Nothing. They didn't mean anything. But the fact is that this is your ex-wife and this is your ex-husband. So you cannot now tell each other that you know that, well, this relationship is what? Valid. But you overlook that most important part and you continue living with each other. Because you find that, well, we get back now, we understand and we regret this thing. We really regret it. So in marriage, there is restriction for both husband and wife in regards their relationship together. Talaq removes that relationship. When you divorce your wife, you actually tell your wife that you are no longer halal for me to be with. And I cannot see you, and you cannot stay in my room, and you cannot see me, and you cannot stay in my room. We cannot be in the same places of intimacy anymore. Those are the restrictions when it comes to pronouncing divorce. You take away all your rights of marriage. You take away all your rights of a relationship. That goes with talaq. Just like death. Talaq is almost as is death, because you actually consider this person to be no longer part of your life. That is how you could actually think about it. When you pronounce divorce, you actually consider this individual as being no part of your life anymore, as though they are dead. That's as serious and as important as one should understand that relationship. When you use that word, what happens? Everything ends. In this situation, they are missing the following and most important things. First of all, it is missing marital education. You just did something that was most dangerous and a heinous crime, and now you want to what? Resolve it by just saying, well, we're really sorry. That can't really work, but really sorry. It needs them to have respect for each other. To start with, if it is that you respect the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you pronounce divorce on your spouse, at least show respect for what you have done. At least respect each other. This is what you would do to someone who is not your what? Your wife. You will do this for someone who is not your wife, because this person now is not your wife or your husband. So you must respect this person with this level of separation. That is one of the things that is lost and not considered as well. This is a part of that level of respect. No experience as they go into a new life with new responsibilities, even in a second marriage. Sometimes they divorce and they go into a next relationship and they didn't even learn from the first one yet. They didn't learn the lessons of the first marriage, of what marriage is. And that's why many people today, you see, Islam as a religion, a way of life, a deen. Today, it is something different, subhanallah. Today, we live something different and preach something called Islam. And our families live something different and hear about something called Islam. It can't work so. And it will never be that we live something different and want to live or hear Islam and associate with Islam to some extent. It's like taking Islam in dosage when you need it. When you need it. But when it has no need for you, then you what? Leave it right there. This is how it works today in society. And one of the lacking condition of the most important dosage here right now is what? Learning about the relationship and marriage and what it entails, and when it reaches a point when you cannot handle it and divorce comes, what to do. We don't know what to do. We are not knowledgeable enough in society and our communities as how to handle the situation. And as simple as is, I would say, even a divorcee we cannot handle. Even a divorcee we cannot handle in our societies today. Why? For example, when this woman divorces and comes to the masjid, what do you think happens to every lady in the masjid? They're watching she, like she do something she shouldn't do. Right? That's how they look at her. And how do you think she would feel? She would not feel welcome in this society. And what do you think she will do after that? Either stay, go somewhere else, or get somebody else different from a different religion. Because she feels that here in Islam, there is no compassion. There is no love. There is no concern of what to deal with the situation. And that is what? A mental block has nothing to do with Islam, you know. It has to do with our attitudes in a social environment that is totally biased of such individuals. When a divorcee would come, how they would look at it. Is it a person who consider themselves to be in a very high influential or highfalutin position, and they let that position what? Take them for a ride, and they will see somebody at a lower level in their life, and they will discard them as not even being in existence. So this is how we also think, even in our own masjid, in our own community, when it comes to divorcee. Sometimes even this situation comes that the masjid has no sort of intervention when it comes to a divorcee case. Whether this woman or this man, they have children, they separated, what is the financial position of both of them? Whether the children need something, whether the divorcee woman needs something or the husband needs something, we don't really care. You only find out after some time, well, so and so happened, and break up, and them go on, and she go on, so and look all this that happened now. And we now trying to figure out what happened in our community, because our communities were not developed in our current time to deal with issues like this. Because we are so much in number, yet we have little to do with each other in our community, because we have little knowledge about each other, except through some little message or some little this or little that. That's how the information passes, and half of it may not be true, and then we didn't figure out everything after that. So even that, the masjids have to learn how to deal with situations like this. And as well, we should also look at the fact that, you know, they feel cut out from the community when this happens. They feel cut off. They feel that there's no way to connect back because they are ashamed. One, they feel ashamed. They feel that they didn't achieve what they're supposed to achieve in life, because everybody else, you know, they're moving on in their life, and they look at everybody else, look how happy them. She see them have a real nice marriage life. Look at my one, it messed up so sour, and I can't do nothing in my life again. That's how they end up. That's how they feel. They don't feel and they don't understand how to get back into society unless society embrace them. You know how sometimes you look at them like, you know, prisoners come out of prison? Yeah, we have to watch them carefully, you know, because you can never tell what they're going to do. Sometimes you treat them like that. And this is what is sad. This is what is sad when it comes to that. So sometimes the divorcees, they are forced to create their own kind of linkages. You know, all the divorced women, they'll come together and then bash all the men who divorce. That is a wrong environment. I mean, yes, it could be a support group. You could learn things, something like that. But sometimes the adverse take place which actually push them in a direction that they'll watch all men as being who divorce as bad men. Them men, you can never find a good one. That is the adverse of what happens when such groups are created, and the correct group is not really formed to give that individual that needed advice and reinforcement that mistakes and condition in marriages will always exist, and you must be able to move on with life. Get someone else, not forcing you, but when you feel comfortable enough, move on. But don't look at everybody else and stereotype every other person now. Because you had a bad situation, everybody else bad. No. That also is derived out when we leave our divorcee women and male men to be on their own. It is also difficult upon them that they feel hurt when people tell them to get married. You're married again? What are you waiting on? You know, that, come on. Yes, it is hard for them as it is already. But for you to come and tell them, what you're waiting on is even worse. They need time. They need to understand. They need someone to support them. If you want them to that, don't tell them what you think. You tell a parlor, you just go inside and say, come to get married. You can buy something there. No, it doesn't work so. It doesn't operate like that. Because they are much more afraid of getting married. They are much more afraid of getting married because they don't want to get burned twice. Right? So they're afraid of that. And hence, as I mentioned, that support in our communities, we don't have it yet. We need to build it. We need to establish it. So let people know that you did that, we are willing to go forward. Don't sit back and wait till they come. We establish here. When you're ready, come, you check us out. We okay? You just come and find us here, no problem. We need to examine our community, know our people, and know the situations that they are in, and help. And then they will come forward, because otherwise they will just slip away in the cracks, as you would say, and you no longer have them at our disposal for help. So divorces must be treated with some level of that concern and that care. And therefore, at this juncture, we should understand that when we look at their lives, community as a whole should always look after the children of these people, because sometimes when they go in the masjid and, I don't want my children playing with your children, it had nothing to do with children, but because you're a divorced woman, your children should play with the next person's children. It goes to that extent. You can never understand why, as though something changed with the children also. But these levels of, insanity, I would say, exist within our own communities and many other communities as well, but it has no bearing on what we do to these children. The fact is that we don't know what happens, and as we're going to come to that point now, when children are in that situation, when their parents divorce. What happens to them? So, let's see. After this, you are new to each other in that relationship when you get married a second time. But don't fall for the same things as you would fall before, because this is stereotyping in your mind of your relationship before. So that's one of the dangers of going back into a second marriage immediately. The danger of being divorced and still living with the so-called spouse or ex-spouse, as the case would be, is very, 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 I would say, not just saying haram or prohibited, but the fact is that you do this out of putting yourself and telling yourself we will stay in the relationship despite it being haram or prohibited. Now, many people want to go back and check themselves what happened to them. I'm not here to let you think to yourselves whether you fear if your marriage is still in order, your marriage is still in order. That's not for me to decide. What I'm bringing here to you is information of how conscious you should be about such situations, if they exist. And why would people remain in such a dangerous environment? One, kids are important in a divorce. And this is the number one problem in divorce. Children are the number one problem when divorce takes place. Apart from the money, apart from the house and everything else, children are the ones who are in most danger. They are in most danger. We don't see it, but what they see is their parents. They don't see ex-husband and ex-wife. They see a mother and they see a father, and they could never understand why you will behave so, and why will daddy beat mommy, and why will mommy decide to do this, and why will they behave like that. They cannot understand that. Why did you bring them into this world to see things like that? That's how they look at it. Why I'm here for? Why you bring me here for if you're not going to do this? This is how they would think. This is how they would feel. They don't understand the relationship, But what they see in themselves is their mentality. Their mentality is that you all are hurting me. You're hurting my relationship. I am your child. Look what you all are doing to me. That's how they believe. That's how they think. That's what's in their heart. You know what are the striking and most things that they will run towards some kids? Suicide. If they can't get a relationship with their parents, they will want to commit suicide. Daily there are people in this same island and many other places in the world that such cases are reported, that children, because of domestic violence, husband and wife fighting on the verge of divorce and probably divorce, still living together, fighting each other, children tend to want to commit suicide because they cannot live in a house like that. It's stressful for a child. We are told in the Quran that this is not what Islam is about. We know that this is not Islam. We are told how we should live and mitigate in relationship. وَآشِرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. We should live in goodness. In goodness. But yet, understanding what happens to this child. That this child stays in this environment, sees this violence, and sometimes some of them want to jump out the windows of their houses. Some of them want to take extra dosage of medication to finish their lives because they cannot handle the fact of the separation of their mother and their father. How to deal with that? And that's some of the things that parents, before you make such decisions and such behavior before your children, you brought them in this world together. Allah bless you with them. I'm not saying that, yes, you may not have that level of a relationship that you would want to separate, but you have to do that in the manner that the Quran tells us to do it in. Not in the manner that you feel that you want to do because of your sarcasm, because of your ways, because of your behaviors, because of some other reasons outside that you have. And who suffers? The children will suffer. This is evident, and this is what exactly the children do. So both parents sometimes, because they see this, both parent, mother and father, will always be the biological parents of their children, no matter what. No matter if you are separated or together, the father of this child or the mother of this child will always remain the father and the mother of this child. That cannot change. And there are also Islamic rulings in relationship to children who are minor, who they should stay with when they are divorced, and when they reach a certain age, who they should stay with after the divorce also take place. So all of those things are also taken care of, but that's not our area of issue right now in discussion. We are looking at the actual condition and feeling and the Islamic perspective of what happens to the children in the relationship and why people stay in their relationship. And what we see is that because of this, we must realize that children will want to know that they are safe. They want to be safe. They don't want to be leaving their homes. They don't want to feel that they're going to stay by some other relative. They will feel embarrassed because this is their mother and this is their father. This is how they will think. They don't want to leave. So what do? How should you deal with this? Before you reach this stage, you have to come to think about all of these things before. Because a child knows they want to be like any other person. Just like the divorcee was feeling embarrassed, this child also feels that. Because other people will say, they're playing, go on, where your mommy? I'm not living with mommy, I'm living with daddy. Why? Children like they're biggest investigators, they want to know all your business. And that's how it goes down. So what do you think will happen to this child? I don't want to be in that environment anymore. I will just move out of that place. I won't lie with this person anymore because they want to know, they're going to make me feel bad. And then they would say things about me like that. So children, they feel this and they will be in this condition. And hence, with their parents not being together, they don't have this level of safety, then how will they know that they can be with both parents even if the parents separate? Sometimes they want to know how I could be with you and how I could be with you. How I can live? I don't have you anymore. How I can live? Who will take care of me? They are accustomed with both parents looking after them for some reason or the other. But when this happens, what will they do? And that is issues that Islam and Muslims must also be taken and be cognizant of and understand what Islam teaches us how to deal with that relationship. So that must be also taught and understood before you reach this stage. And in the similar manner, some parents, some couples stay in a relationship because of the children, because of that. Because they say, what is with children, what are we going to do? So yes, it's your children, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with it? So if you know this is the case, so either you stay in a relationship, being divorced, how do you live? But I've seen cases where couples divorce, the children in the house, and the wife stays upstairs, and the husband lives downstairs. I've seen cases like that. All right, that exists. So don't think it's far-fetched. It is a reality. I've seen cases where they live in the same place but different rooms and all different type of situations in the same building, same house, and the children are facilitated by that. But that is also what? Not right. Right? But it exists. I'm just letting you know that it exists. This is what happens. The fact of the matter is that what will you do to resolve that relationship? Do you want to be with this person again, or are you just in this relationship now because of the children? Would Islam allow you to be in this relationship because of the children? Is the children sufficient enough to solve the divorce? No. Therefore, we must know what is the solution and how to deal with the solution. And that is important as being there for your children. Because your children and your wife, as your ex-wife, they are all your tests in this world. And if you come in a situation where this comes your test, whether or not you are going to actually fail in this test now, because you could be in an environment where you can be committing sin. So how do you deal with it? And therefore you should go to your scholars, go to your imams, go to those people who can help you resolve those issues. Say this and this, and as he explain it, how can I get around this? I still want this marriage to work now. I've learned my lesson well. Okay, well then you have to do this and this and this. You must understand that this is what the principles are. So they stay in relationship because of business assets as well. Our next point, which we will close with today, that marriages sometimes, because of the extent of the wealth, it's too difficult to dissolve the marriage. And many businesses today and people today, couples who have gotten married and established businesses, when it comes to divorce, they say the lawyers will take all the money, so better we stay here. Fight and kill each other. You know, that's what the end of it at the end of the day. So they don't want to divorce the business, because even if they divorce in the business itself, what's going to happen? The business might be at risk of shutting down. And sometimes they don't know how to run a partnership in a business when divorce takes place. Because who gets what, X and Y will be a next problem by itself. So they prefer to grind the axe until someone of them foot get cut off, but they will stay in it despite all of that. So your wealth also now becomes a test when divorce occurs. Yeah. Or we see many cases in Trinidad when we see court cases going where murder take place. Wife just, somebody hires and kill the husband, or somebody kill the wife, and it goes on. So the property end up being in one of them hands. So if you can't live together, well, only one of we could what? Live. And they know how to deal with that, which is obviously a test. So are you intending to do something that's haram and go to where? Hell? Or are you intending to live in this relationship and still go to hell? Or would you want to love your money so much and not part from it? Make that choice. That is how it is. That is the reality of what marriage, when it ends with divorce, how to treat with that situation. And it's a challenging thing. This is when Allah SWT puts test upon test. This is one of the most difficult things to deal with. And it is costly, it is stressful, it hurts, and it destroys many families. Many families. So we have reached a point in understanding here that this is what happens. On our next session, inshallah, we have to look at how the Quran tells us to treat with some of these issues when divorce actually takes place. How should a couple, ex-husband, ex-wife, deal with it according to Islamic principles and guidelines? Inshallah. So we stop there today, inshallah. Dua. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma tassalam, minka salam, tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله.
حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني. الله طريقي قد وضحى والقلب يسير به فرحا حرب وجهاد متقد ودم بالعزة قد نضحا